I'm Brianna. Standing at the entrance of the Ritz-Carlton ballroom, I took a deep breath. The place was buzzing with energy, filled with bankers and investors eager for the New Horizon investor presentation. Douglas, the new CEO of the firm I once worked for, was on stage, glowing with self-assurance, pacing like a caged lion. The moment I stepped into the ballroom, my heels clicking on the marble floor, all eyes turned to me. Douglas froze mid-gesture. His smile faltered for a second, then tightened. "Well," he said into the microphone, "it seems we have a crasher." "Security." I raised my voice. "I'm not crashing, Douglas. I'm here to correct the record." The crowd murmured in surprise. Douglas tried to dismiss me, saying I was a former unwell employee let go for ethical violations. But I wasn't going to back down. I continued walking towards the stage. "The only violation here is the $40 million you funneled through Obsidian Solutions." The room fell into a stunned silence, followed by a wave of murmurs. Douglas's face turned red with anger. "Get her out of here now," he shouted. 2 security guards started towards me. I stopped and reached into my purse. The guards flinched, thinking I had a weapon. Instead, I pulled out a USB drive and held it up. "It's all here, Douglas. The shell companies, the fake signatures, bribes to Senator Hawkins, and the recording from Friday night where you ordered Marcus to wipe the servers." Douglas laughed, a shrill and desperate sound. "You're delusional. You're a thief and a liar. I fired you." I replied calmly, "You didn't fire me. You freed me." As I said, "Look at the side door now," the doors burst open. "FBI, nobody move." Agent Miller walked in, badge raised high. Behind him, a dozen agents in windbreakers swarmed the room. Douglas stood on stage, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "This is a mistake," he screamed. "She's the criminal. Arrest her." But Miller bypassed me and went straight to Douglas. "Douglas Crane, you are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit destruction of evidence, and identity theft." Douglas sputtered, "You know who I am?" Miller pulled out the handcuffs. "You're the guy who messed with the wrong whistleblower." It's hard to believe how I got to this point. I grew up in a small town in Texas. My parents were hard-working folks. My father was a mechanic, a man of integrity who always taught me to stand up for what's right. My mother was a schoolteacher, kind-hearted and patient. They instilled in me the values of honesty and hard work. I moved to New York City to pursue a career in consulting. After 20 years in the industry, I became a senior client strategist at Bridgeview Consulting. I was the one who could tell Fortune 500 CEOs the harsh truth, and for a $5 million retainer, I could make their problems look better. Everything changed when the board announced a corporate restructuring. A new CEO, Victor Stone, walked into the office. He was 45 years old, with a perfect set of teeth that seemed almost too white, and he spoke in corporate jargon like synergy and paradigm shift all the time. He didn't care about our long-standing clients, he was only interested in appearances. He brought in a transition team of young, overconfident guys in slim, fit suits. They started prowling the hallways, asking strange questions. One day in the break room, I overheard 2 of Victor's minions talking about making the Q3 numbers look robust for the investors. In simple terms, they were talking about booking money we didn't have yet. I started to notice red flags. My access to certain shared drives started glitching, and my legacy clients, companies I had nurtured for 10 years, were being reassigned to junior partners. When I asked Victor about it, he gave me a fake smile and said we needed to pivot and bring in fresh energy. Then, I found an invoice for $250,000 paid to a vendor named Eclipse Solutions. I knew every vendor in the city, but I had never heard of this one. Digging deeper, I found that it was a shell company with a P.O. box in Delaware and a generic Gmail address as the point of contact. The approval signature was the digital stamp of the CFO, Henry, who had been with the firm for 30 years. When I confronted Henry about it, he flinched and told me it was a special project for Victor and that I should leave it alone. I knew something was seriously wrong, so I started quietly investigating on my own. 3 weeks later, I received a notification about a document processed for Omega Systems, an account that Victor had taken away from me. When I opened the document, it was a federal compliance certification with my signature, but I hadn't signed it. I was at a dental appointment at the time the system logs showed I accessed the file. I took the document to HR. The HR director, Lisa, was more interested in avoiding conflict than solving the problem. She dismissed my concerns, saying it might be a system glitch. I realized then that they were setting me up to take the fall. My isolation at the office increased. Conversations stopped when I entered the break room, and meeting invitations stopped coming. Then, I received a phone call from a client. Someone had impersonated me and tried to move their account to a new holding company for tax efficiency. I was furious. They were not only forging my signature but also using my reputation to funnel clients into their shell companies. I remembered my father's words, "Don't let bullies win." I decided to fight back. I bought a burner phone and contacted the FBI. My handler, Agent Harris, was a no-nonsense guy. We met at a coffee shop near my office. I gave him the evidence I had collected, which showed that there were 12 shell companies involved in a complex fraud scheme. The fraud was extensive. Bridgeview would get a legitimate government contract, subcontract 40% of the work to a shell company, which would then subcontract to another shell. By the time the money reached the third layer, it disappeared into offshore accounts in the Caymans and Cyprus. And the actual work was never done. Agent Harris said we needed direct evidence that Victor was directing the fraud. I had to make him break his code. One afternoon, I saw Victor walk past my glass-walled office. He stared at me like a predator. I knew he was suspicious. I also noticed that my office was being reorganized. My ergonomic chair, my desk, and my diplomas were gone, replaced by a folding table and a rusted metal chair. My computer access was suspended. It was a clear message, they wanted me to quit. But I didn't. I continued to run the capture software Agent Harris gave me, which logged network traffic from the executive suite. One day, I found a large file transfer from Victor's terminal to an external server. The metadata showed it was about a project clean sweep with a termination list. I knew they were planning to erase evidence, and I was on that list. On a Friday, I received a summons for an emergency board meeting. Victor presented false evidence that I had been stealing client data and trying to poach clients. The board believed him, and I was escorted out of the office in disgrace. But I had a plan. I knew Victor thought I was broken and going home to cry. Instead, I went to a coffee shop across the street from the office and waited for the lights to go out. I still had a master key card from when I authorized a security system upgrade 3 years ago. At midnight, I sneaked into the office. I first went to the server room and cloned the physical backup drive. Then, I went to Victor's office. I heard him and Henry talking about wiping the physical drives to destroy evidence. I recorded their conversation. As I was leaving, I accidentally knocked into a planter. Victor sent Henry to check, but I managed to hide under a table in the adjacent conference room. After they left, I made my way out of the building. Now, here I am, watching as Victor is being arrested. Marcus, who tried to run, was also caught in the lobby. The DOJ has a reward program for whistleblowers, and if the fraud is $40 million, I'll get a significant severance package. I walked out of the Ritz-Carlton. The sun was high, and the city was loud. I turned off my phone, which was buzzing with notifications from headhunters, competitors, and reporters. I went to a small dive bar on 9th Avenue. It was noon, and I ordered a whiskey neat. I sat in the booth and toasted the empty air. To my dad, to the legacy clients, and to the end of this nightmare. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was the woman who burned the castle down to save the kingdom. I finished my drink, left a $20 on the bar, and walked out into the New York traffic. Victor was going to prison, and I was going to start a new chapter in my life.